Yesterday, CNN actually held a town hall for Donald Trump, and liberals had an absolute meltdown afterwards. Look at some of these headlines that you see here. Trump's CNN town hall was a MAGA rally. Trump was awful. CNN was worse. Donald Trump's CNN town hall was a disaster. CNN failed America with its train wreck of a Trump town hall. CNN Trump Town Hall network under fire for shameful platforming of Trump disinformation. Unbelievable. Here's a Rolling Stone headline. Effing disgrace. CNN gifts Trump primetime campaign rally. Oh boy. Let's actually watch one of the meltdowns happen. We've got Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper having a fit. Here it is.
College in Manchester, New Hampshire. Tonight's CNN Town Hall, moderated by Caitlin Collins, the first of the 2024 presidential campaign, is now in the books. Good evening from New York.
Oh, from Washington, it was an interesting night. Mr. Trump's first lie was told just seconds into the night with his false familiar claim that the 2020 election was, quote, a rigged election. And the falsehoods kept coming fast and furious about the January 6th insurrection, about the threat to Vice President Pence, about Pence's ability to overturn the election, about COVID, about the economy, and more. He called a black law enforcement officer a thug. He said people here in Washington, D.C. at Chinatown don't speak English. He attacked Caitlin as a nasty woman because she was trying to get him to answer a question. Perhaps most chillingly, the day after a 9-person jury of his peers in New York found him liable for sexual battery and defamation and ordered him to pay writer E. Jean Carroll $5 million, he made fun of her account of her sexual assault. And many in the audience laughed.
And applauded. The former president making his first appearance tonight on this network since the 2016 election. He spoke with and took questions from New Hampshire Republican and undeclared voters who plan to take part in the GOP primary. And it took place just a day after, as Jake referenced, Manhattan federal jury found him liable of sexually abusing and defaming writer E. Jean Carroll.
Interesting strategy, right? To have Trump at a town hall meeting on CNN and then later on go down and, have an absolute meltdown about it and have all the rest of your media pundits say, oh, this was just shameful. How dare we do this? How dare CNN do this? Of course, it wasn't just liberal media having a meltdown. It was also politicians. You can always rely on AOC to just go nuts. She wrote this: CNN should be ashamed of themselves. They have lost total control of this town hall to again be manipulated into platforming election disinformation, defenses of January 6th, and a public attack on a sexual abuse victim. The audience is cheering him on and laughing at the host. She actually tweeted out she was in a tweet storm, but let's actually play a clip of her talking about the disgrace of this CNN platforming of presidential candidate and former president of the United States, Donald Trump. Here it is.
I know you said earlier that you will not comment on the platforming of such atrocious disinformation, but I would. I think it was a profoundly irresponsible decision. I don't think that I would be doing my job if I did not say that. And what we saw tonight was a series of extremely irresponsible decisions that put a sexual abuse victim at risk, that put that person at risk in front of a national audience, and I could not have disagreed with it more. It was shameful.
Earlier today, as I was going through all of these clips of the people just having absolute meltdowns and all of these headlines, I was just thinking, is there anybody who could run for office who, if they became president of the United States, I would have this same sort of visceral reaction? I just don't have this sort of hatred for Donald Trump or even Joe Biden that a lot of people have. They have this visceral in their bones. They hate this person, and this person, no matter what, is, the devil of some kind. And I just don't feel that way. But then I thought about AOC. And honestly, if she was president of the United States, would I have that feeling of, we've got to get this person out of office? This person is dangerous. This person cannot be in control of this country. Would I start to then have that feeling that so many Americans have about Trump or Biden? More so Trump, for sure. And I think she would maybe be one of the people that would get me the closest to that feeling. And it's, and I once liked AOC. I once championed her. I once thought that she was going to be this great progressive that was going to go in there and make change in Washington, very similarly to what I see, the ruckus that's being caused by Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz or, people in that faction of the conservative base. They go in there and they say, I don't care if you're Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, we're going to give you hell. And that's what I expected from AOC and the rest of the squad. And of course, that didn't happen. And then there's been a series of disappointments, but nothing has been more disappointing to me than AOC being the queen of wanting censorship, wanting to deplatform people. How she, Tucker Carlson's deplatforming works. Deplatforming works. She's dangerous. I find her ideas, out of everybody's ideas, there's a lot of bad ideas out there that I don't like from political leaders. Ideas that I think even may be dangerous to a level, but there's nothing to me more dangerous than wanting to censor ideas, silence people, deplatform people. To me, that is the most dangerous thing, because if we do not have free discourse in this country, if we don't have free thought, if we don't have the ability to express even unpopular opinions, we are no longer a free country. If that goes away, the rest of it crumbles with it. That to me is the most pivotal or the most, I don't even know the right word for it, but just everything hinges on that one thing. Everything hinges on that. And she is the biggest champion of getting rid of it. So I guess if AOC was in office, I might start to have those feelings that maybe she has towards Donald Trump. I don't know. Let's just hope I never have to find out. I want to move on now and talk about Biden and the media coverage of Joe Biden. And by the way, Trump said a lot of interesting things in that town hall. You should probably watch it. He says a lot of things you expect him to say. So I didn't feel like anything was very eye-opening or shocking or revealing in any way. But still, nonetheless, I think it's interesting. And they should. CNN, if they're a legitimate, serious news organization, should be platforming and giving town halls to all of the major presidential candidates, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. All right, so let's talk about the media's coverage of Joe Biden, because this is where things get really interesting. We saw yesterday Comer from the House Oversight Committee come out with a big, lengthy, there was a press conference and there's a lengthy, memo that they've put out, essentially pointing the finger at Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, possibly Joe Biden, and unnamed Biden, basically the Biden family. For there's a lot of suspicious payments, money being taken from foreign companies that are then being sifted through shell companies that end up in the hands of Hunter Biden and Haley Biden and, a bunch of Bidens. And there's some investigating that would need to be done to find out if there's something much more nefarious, which many of us suspect, because why would the Bidens be making millions of dollars when none of them have really any expertise in these areas where these companies were paying them? So it looks like from the smell test that these were payments for influence, for access to Joe Biden and the other cohorts in Washington while Joe Biden was vice president of the United States. What's interesting about the media coverage is they're covering it. That's what's interesting about it. You see CNN covering this oversight committee. You see CBS covering it. You see NBC covering it. You see, there's newspapers covering it. Now, many of them are covering it from the angle at this point of, oh, there's nothing to see here. Republicans trying to link Joe Biden and there's nothing there. But the fact they're covering it at all is significant, because this is how it starts. They're going to start off by saying, nothing to see here. Yes, there's this thing. Okay, here's some of the things that they've claimed that they did. Here's the dots. Connect the dots, but here's the conclusion of all those dots being connected. And I'm going to tell you the conclusion, right? And liberal media, what do they tell you the conclusion is? Nothing to see here. Don't you worry. But they are setting this up. They're setting Biden up, from my opinion, looking at the fact that they even covered this. Now, if you look at past allegations against Joe Biden or Hunter Biden, like the laptop, what did they do when there was the laptop? Oh, this is misinformation. This is false. This is fake. We're not even going to cover it. Tara Reid, when she came out with her allegations against Joe Biden, what did they do? They said nothing. For weeks, you couldn't find her name anywhere on any of the media outlets. Nothing. Zip, zilch, zero for weeks before they finally breathed a word of her name saying, okay, there's this allegation. I guess we're going to bring it up. They typically will remain silent if they want to cover for Joe Biden. The fact that all of these mainstream networks are even saying something about this Comer investigation into the Biden family and their potentially nefarious activities with foreign entities, the fact they're even covering it leads me to believe that Democrats are paving the way to get rid of Joe Biden. They are hoping that this will explode a bit more and that their coverage will have to change from nothing to see here, don't worry about it, to, okay, this is a little concerning, to, all right, this isn't looking good, to the next thing you know, Mr. President, you're going to have to step aside. It's time to resign. That is what I think they're paving the way for. Because here's the thing. We've seen the poll numbers. Joe Biden doesn't win against anybody. He can't win against anyone. You put him up against, in a poll, against Trump, against DeSantis. I mean, for goodness sakes, at this point, I'm sure Mike Pence would beat him. You put him up against, he's losing massive poll numbers to even Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's primarying him. And Joe Biden loses pretty much all the time. But he certainly loses in a matchup against pretty much any Republican. And Democrats know this, and they're desperate to retain power. So they're going to want Joe Biden to exit stage left so that they can whisk somebody else in who they believe has a better fighting chance against a Donald Trump or a Ron DeSantis. They know it's not Joe Biden. So I would say we need to pay attention to the coverage of this, because I think this is the thing they're going to use. Because it's bad. I mean, this does not look good for the Biden family. And I think they're going to use it, and they're going to say, okay, nothing to see here. Then next thing you know, okay, a little concerning, to bye-bye Biden. Bye-bye Biden. Hello, whoever, Pete Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris. I mean, if they make him step down soon, then Kamala could get 1 year in as president, and then they would hope that maybe she would do a really great job. Maybe suddenly Democrats would just fall in love with Kamala Harris because she just does so well in the Oval Office. Or who knows what they're thinking, because they're never really thinking that clearly. But they're certainly, I believe at this point, with all of the news coverage going over this, covering Joe Biden and this potential activity with his family, I think it's a sign that Democrats are going to be asking Joe Biden to exit stage left and just retire off into the sunset. And they'll try to do it as dignified as possible. That's what's going to happen. All right, let's move on with the show. I think we all saw during the pandemic just how important and necessary it is to have a reserve of food and supplies. Many of us couldn't get some of the basics because the supply chain had totally shut down. This is why 4patriots.com is so valuable at the moment. You can get a whole host of different emergency supplies through them, from generators to water filtration systems and emergency food kits. I grew up in Idaho. It's actually where I am right now. And we really pride ourselves on being prepared in Idaho. We have emergency kits. I was taught always to have a 72-hour supply for emergencies, including food and other sorts of first aid supplies. I was taught to have a year's supply of food so that everybody could eat, just in case. You never know. I mean, you never know when something like a natural disaster is going to hit, a pandemic, or even war. And you don't want to wait until the next disaster to get your supplies. So start thinking now about how you can best protect you and your family by visiting 4patriots.com. Use the promo code Kim to get 10% off your order.